It's Wednesday, December 10th, 2014, and you're listening to SYN Boldly, the podcast, the Sign Your Name Project. I'm your host, Trey Comstock, and with me as ever is Stephen Doss.
Good evening.
On this week's show, we are talking about religious legal exemptions and the failure of the internet to explain things properly. So this is very much a show about the news. So on December 4th, 2014, the Michigan House of Representatives passed HB 5958, known as Religious Freedom and Restoration Act, or RFRA. This is not the law of the land in Michigan yet. It is, it's only passed the House. It still has to pass the Senate. What this bill does, and I'll quote a quote from the bill. A person whose religious exercise has been burdened in violation of this section may assert that violation as a claim or defense in any judicial or administrative proceeding and obtain appropriate relief, including equitable relief, against government. So, if the government makes you do something that violates your religion, you can claim this as a defense and not do what the government wants you to do, essentially. Mm-hmm. Now, there are some exemptions to this exemption. The language is phrased pretty broadly. So, if there's a compelling interest, government interest, the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling government interest. So they can still say that there's an overwhelming interest of the state that you have to do this thing, and so you can't claim that exemption. So there still is going to be like a court proceeding. This isn't like the Fifth Amendment where you can just be like, I claim the Fifth, and you're out. There would be like a court proceeding, and you could use so you don't do a thing, the government takes you to court for not doing a thing, and then you claim this as a defense in court. So this is still a pretty complicated thing.
Yeah.
Now, the internet, not good with complicated. And so the internet has blown up.
The internet is not good with most things.
That's true. And so the internet has taken this and jumped to some interesting conclusions. This is somewhat based around the idea of like a Jewish person wouldn't have to undergo an autopsy, which would be, a violation of their religion. That's kind of, or a Muslim butcher wouldn't have to, could practice halal, and wouldn't have to, serve things that weren't. Okay, those are the kind of things that House Speaker Jace Bolger kind of says this is meant to protect. The internet has leapt to an interesting what if. EMTs. One could claim that an EMT, under this law, an EMT could legally refuse to treat a gay patient because treating a gay patient, allowing a gay person to live, would violate their religion, which a religious belief that they believe that all gay people should die. I don't. These are, again, this is the internet jumping to extremes.
Jumping to extremes, yes.
Because the law allows you to claim this exemption, not just for like major core tenets, but also sub-tenets of your religion. So if it in any way violates your religious belief, you can claim this exemption. The other one that gets thrown around by the internet is this idea of pharmacists filling prescriptions for HIV and AIDS meds. Because again, if you believe that all gay people should die, you could refuse to fill the prescription. Now, Jace Bolger thinks, his quote is that this parade of horribles wouldn't be what would happen. This is about government, individual versus government, rather than an individual and an individual. So like, this is not like a landlord could kick out gay tenants. That wouldn't be what this is about. This is more about the state and less about the individual, still, it starts to set up like a really weird scenario where maybe that's not what they intend, but the law is described broadly enough that you could say, okay, fair housing laws under the government, I don't have to follow those because that would violate my religious beliefs. And then you really could, like, kick out your gay tenants under this law in Michigan. So there's a weird... The internet is kind of bad at describing it, leaping to these conclusions. It is, I don't think, written so that EMTs wouldn't have to treat gay patients. I don't...
Right.
I think there is some awkwardness behind this law, but I don't think it's that far down the road. This is not the original purpose of it, but I buy the argument that this could be an unintended consequence.
Yeah, and there's always going to be unintended consequences, especially with people trying to push to see how far they can go so they can break it. In fact, one might suggest that, again, going to extremes, one might suggest that people get in cahoots and they try to like do something where a person who is a landlord and a person who is a tenant are on the same side, and they're like, all right, in order for us to see if we can get this repealed, I'm going to have to evict you and see what happens. And say, and say, like, this is the reason why.
Basically create a test case.
Create a test case, exactly. And lots of people do that. Well, not lots of people, but lots of people think that. They're like, let's see how far we can go. Again, this is between an individual and a government.
I think the other interesting piece is this smells like it'll get a challenge in the Supreme Court because it's balancing two amendments off of against each other. You have the First Amendment, but you also have equal protection under the law.
Yeah.
And this would seem to me to start to violate equal protection. Again, I'm no legal scholar. I worked for one. I know. Well, yeah, you were, at least. You did not finish law school, sir, but you certainly have more. I
started it.
You certainly have more law school hours than I do. I just worked for a judge. You are the actual legal scholar. But this, in my understanding that I do have, this smells like it will go to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Why wouldn't it?
If it does pass, again, it hasn't passed yet. So
it hasn't passed the Senate. It has passed the House. In Michigan. Bless you, sir.
My goodness, I am sneezy-a-palooza over here. Anyway, yeah, and you know what you can say? It's like it's a First Amendment issue, and the whole equal protection. You could make a equal protection argument under this too. It's like there's not protection that can say that the Muslim butcher can have Hillel. Sorry, Halal.
Hillel is oddly enough the Jewish campus organization.
It's the Jewish campus organization. I'm so sorry. But that says you can. That you can do that. It's like I'm not being protected because I have to do this on my end. I'm not being protected under the law because I have to, follow this thing that says I have to give a autopsy to my son, even though I'm Jewish and I want him to be buried in the Jewish cemetery.
I think the issue starts to become that the principle behind this law, that there are some things that we shouldn't have to do because of our religious things. I mean, I think this would be interesting if you applied on a national level. It would mean, for instance, that Quakers couldn't get in trouble for dodging the draft.
Yeah.
There would be no issue.
Them just saying, I'm not filling out the form.
Right. I'm not going to fill this out. I don't believe in war. It is my religious belief. I mean, you or I could do that same thing.
Yeah.
That our religious belief says that I don't believe in war. Actually, if there was a draft, what I would do is I'd become a chaplain. But that's...
If there is a draft, I'd become Canadian.
Right. No.
Hey there, buddy. What's going on?
I really do. That's a great South Park Canadian. Good job. I know. I think about this a lot as we move into a much more permanent war footing. What do I do if there's a draft? And for me, I think I would become a chaplain because those folks need some real pastoral care.
Yep.
And I like going weird places and doing dangerous things, and so maybe that would work. Anyways, I'm off topic, but
I would work at the DoD
sure,
because it's just right up the road.
yeah, fly a desk.
Exactly.
Someone needs to do it. So I think there are important things where we should be able to claim faith exemptions to government mandates. I do. I don't think this law is well defined enough to prevent the possible spillovers. So here's the scenario I envision. I think if an EMT refuses to care for a gay patient, that will not hold up in court. However, that gay person could still die before there's a court challenge.
Right.
So that my worry is not that I have a modicum of faith, and only recent events have left it as only a modicum, but a modicum of faith left in our court system. And that modicum makes me think that that would not get upheld. That they could not get away with that. I think that would fall under you still have to let the state function.
Yeah.
People, and also I think any EMT, I don't know if EMTs, many of whom are doctors and have signed the Hippocratic Oath, and the Hippocratic Oath don't care about nothing.
It's like, no, it's going to be like, oh, is this your brother? It's my boyfriend. Well, I'm sorry. I can't stop you from bleeding out now.
Look, I know plenty of EMTs, some of whom are homophobic. In that moment, I don't know one of them who would care.
No.
I really don't. I think
they have a job to do.
They have a job to
They're
do.
gonna do it
This is what they do.
Just get this. They're professionals.
They're professionals, and they care. Like, I think the internet is not giving EMTs enough credit.
No.
I don't know an EMT who, if they see someone dying there on the floor, cares. They may be totally homophobic outside of that moment, but in that moment, I don't know one.
An EMT. They are someone who's there to help and protect.
Right.
And make sure that the person who needs the help gets the help. Right.
So I think on a level, I don't think this would get upheld. So let's go with more the pharmacist, because I don't know many pharmacists, so who knows? But
all pharmacists are hate-filled.
Right. So hate-filled pharmacist.
Hate-filled pharmacist.
Hate-filled pharmacist. I'm not prejudiced against pharmacists. It's just I know more EMTs, and so I don't know any EMTs that would actually do that. But
I'm pretty sure there's no pharmacist that would do that either.
But okay, so for me that's maybe not even the point. Yeah. The point is if there's one that even tries this, that this law needs better definition, not because I don't think there shouldn't be religious exemptions, because I think there should. For instance, I don't want any Quaker to have to fear the draft. Right. So there are things here that are valuable, but this needs to get better defined so that there isn't even a question of people not receiving medical care.
Right.
If the United States would sign on to the part of the UN Convention on Human Rights that declares healthcare as a human right, this would change a lot of things about this. There's a solution here if you just declare healthcare a human right. But then you'd have to really provide it as a government, and we don't do that.
We provide health care. We also make sure that you have to pay for it. The health care is good. Let's be honest with ourselves. The healthcare is great in the United States. But when it comes to paying for it, it sucks donkey ball.
No. Okay, so we're really good if you are in the process of dying, right? If you are actively dying, we got your back. It'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but we got your back. What we're really bad at is preventative medicine.
Yeah.
And so
that's because that goes into tort reform and all that stuff, because it's too tough to be preventative and not get your ass sued if you die. It's like, no, we're doing everything we can to prevent this illness. You still get the illness, then you get sued because America.
Right. Well, we don't. When our doctor tells us to lose weight, we don't lose weight. When the doctor tells us to stop drinking some or whatever, we don't do these things that would prevent. Look, it's heart disease, right? If we're talking about healthcare and costs of healthcare, it's heart disease. Yeah. the number I always throw around is like 2 people died in this country from Ebola and 300,000 will die from heart disease, which is, there are genetic predispositions where, let's be serious, if you're American, you have that at this point, we all have that genetic predisposition. Who doesn't have a family history of heart disease at this point in history?
That is true, yes.
I mean, I know I do. I'm sure you do, right?
I believe so, yes.
And it's not even just like white people. People of many races. Look, we are just
living in the deep fried United States of America.
Right. We are all just, are you in any way related to Brits or Germans? Automatically. And then even there are other predispositions in there as well. So we're all predisposed to heart disease. And that's, relatively speaking, preventable. Difficult to prevent. Lord knows. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with, huge risk factors for it. I've had to really fight to claw back. But it can be done. Take faith. We're way off topic. So, religious exemptions.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's say you were writing this bill. Let's create the hypothetical scenario. Let's say you were writing this bill. What would you do differently to prevent kind of the internet's jumping to conclusions?
Okay. I would say, hey, come on, listen to the bill. No. I would put in very specific language that states that in emergency situations, there is no... In emergency/crisis situations, between individuals, there is nothing like this. This doesn't exist. I.e., and I would put very specific examples. Like, for example, in an EMT setting, in an emergency medical setting, in a basically, I would say this bill does not, I don't know I would have to have better words for this, but this bill doesn't apply in the event of, physical harm.
So you would name the exact exemptions. You would define those exemptions.
I would define exact exemptions. Sure. Just because then you don't have all this running around saying if you go to the nth degree and EMT can't provide services, no, the EMT has to because it's an exemption.
Right. Or a cop has to protect a gay couple whose house has been broken into, or these kind of things.
Yeah, you can't just say, well, that's God punishing you and walk away. No, you have to provide anything that is supposed to be given to you as a citizen.
Right.
You still need to be provided that.
Right.
If you're a butcher, and again, going back to this, that's not an emergency situation. You can go find your pork other places.
Right. And, if you want to lose business, to a certain extent, I think of it as it is your right to lose business as
It is your right
person.
To lose business as a business person. Exactly.
If you want, is that it's real bad. You shouldn't do it. But if you do, fine. That's your business. I'm going to open an affirming butcher shop.
Exactly.
And, and that's, businesses can refuse service
to anyone
for any reason.
It is their right.
It's their right. And, we have some issues about segregation. We are a desegregated society, but in the end, businesses can refuse. And if they want to claim a religious exemption, fine. I think they're on real shaky ground for most things.
Yeah.
Obviously, being a halal butcher is not one of those shaky ground.
That is not a shaky.
Be your halal butcher. If you want to not do gay wedding cakes, you're going to get some real bad publicity. But again, if you want to refuse business in that way because of a religious whatever, that's on you, and that's on your conscience.
It's your right to lose business. It's your right to be discriminatory, and I do think it's discriminatory. However, there are some deeply and sincerely held beliefs and haired beliefs. There are some sincerely held beliefs that are not from a place of hate or anger, but a place of understanding that something that they don't agree with is a sin, and
Sure.
they can't promote that.
Sure. And I think it is the wedding cake.
I wish that wouldn't change. I wish that would change, but
and I think the wedding cake example is the one that we've actually seen it. So that's the one that
Yes.
feels realistic to me. The idea of not filling someone's prescription as a pharmacist, it's like violating your professional code of ethics.
yeah, you can
You want to
get
be a bad you want to be
you
a
can have
really-
your license removed,
Right.
not by the government, but by your licensing board.
body. Right. And you would
Yeah.
probably get fired from Target or CVS or whatever. I mean,
Right.
you know,
And those people make bank.
right.
If you are a pharmacist,
Pharmacist, not a bad gig.
yeah, was that 96,000, and you're getting doctor in front of your name?
Yeah. Yeah, I have more master's degrees than your average pharmacist, and I will never make that much money. So there you go. Ministry.
Pharmacists do a great job,
No, pharmacists.
and we love pharmacists just like we love everyone.
Right. I don't know many, so that's why I can, say terrible things about pharmacists. No, this is one of those things where I just don't. I have slightly more faith in humanity.
Yes,
Then maybe I should, but then maybe it's warranted. But I really don't see someone in a state carrying or protective function not doing it. Now, I have, as we've seen in Ferguson and New York, maybe I am just slightly too optimistic. And so the law shouldn't be defined in a way that relies on my optimism of humanity.
yeah,
And maybe that's the problem here. Is this law is a little too optimistic about humans, as am I. This law needs to be tightened up so that it explicitly defines that people still must be protected and cared for by their government
right.
as a legal right. That they have equal protection under the law. And so I
Right.
hope this goes to the Supreme Court, not because I don't think there shouldn't be religious exemptions of any kind, but because this law needs to get tightened up.
Yeah, there needs to be some boundaries.
Yeah.
Because you can just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I had to punch this person because religious exemption."
Right.
It's my authority. It's what I do, is I have to go stone the sinners.
Right.
Um.
So, on that note, we should probably get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us. Another episode of Sin Boldly. If you have any feedback about how you want to stone the sinners, Sin Boldly at nfear.org, facebook.com/the Sign Your Name Project, and at Sin Boldly on Twitter. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord, and end fear by signing your name. Good night. Show title, I want to go stone the sinners. I have to go stone the sinners.
Caveat: please do not go stone anyone, sinners or otherwise.
You really will run into some legal trouble. I would love to try your legal exemption to go
That's
stone
my
people.
religious exemption.
Yeah, I don't think
Leviticus 25:17.
I don't think that's going to work, Stephen. As much as I would like it to, I don't think it's